Hello and a very warm welcome to Sarat Chandra IAS Academy, where your dreams are our mission. This is Yatharth here. In today's video, we'll be talking about why do we need a global plastic treaty in 2024. What is the background to this, the UNEA discussions, what is the 30 by 30 mission, and we'll see the important statistics related to the plastic pollution and whatever more is important for prelims. What are the steps taken by India and so on. Let us see what topics and subtopics we are going to cover in this. So we'll start with what is UNEA and what did it decide in 2022. Alright, we'll see how it impacted and impacts what's going on in 2024. We'll see what discussions are going on relating to the Global Plastic Treaty. Alright, then we'll see impacts of the plastic pollution on the earth and the statistics and the data related to it, which can be useful in the mains as well as pre. Alright, we'll see how will this treaty help if implemented and agreed upon. We'll see what are the challenges involved towards implementation and agreeing of this treaty, which countries or people or lobbies are against this treaty. We'll see what is high ambition coalition and how is it impacting this treaty. Alright, so let's start with the UNEA. So as you can see by the name UN, that means United Nations Environmental or Environment Assembly. Alright, and it is a part of the United Nations Environment Program, that is UNEP. So a part of UNEP is UNEA. Alright, so UNEA was established in 2012 by the UN Environmental Program, UNEP, as the world's highest level decision making body on the environment. So this is a primary body, please remember this. It was established in 2012 by the UNEP. Alright, the frequency is it meets every 2 years. Alright, 2 year is a time enough for the world to change in respect to climate change and have such discussions. So earlier it met in 2022. Alright, now it's meeting this year in 2024 and it will have two rounds. The first round is going on now in Ottawa, Canada, and second round will be in the Busan, South Korea. Alright, the membership. So UNE is a universal membership body, meaning all 193 UN members are automatically members of the UNEA. Alright, the headquarters, these are very important. They are located in the Nairobi, Kenya. Alright, so it is the same place where headquarters of UNEP are also. So in the Nairobi, Kenya. Please remember this. Nairobi, Kenya. Okay. So now we see what happened in 2022. So in 2022, 175 countries, a significant amount of countries, they are party to the United Nations Environment Assembly, that is UNEA, signed a mandate. All right, signed a mandate. And what was this mandate about? Which makes it legally binding for the signatories to address the full life of plastic. The full life of plastic. Full life of plastic means from production to end of life, whether it is recycling or whether it is the complete dumping or complete wastages. So production to disposal. All right, and what was the objective? Objective was to end the plastic pollution. Was to end the plastic pollution. So there was formed an international negotiating committee. International negotiating committee. So what was the task of this? Drafting and ratifying over the mandate for over next 2 years. All right. Now in this decade, this global plastic treaty and this mandate which was signed, it is equivalent to two major developments of this decade: the Montreal Protocol, which phased out ozone depleting substances to protect the Earth's ozone layer, and the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015. All right, which aims to limit global warming and strengthen countries' ability to deal with climate change impacts. So we can see we have achieved a lot of between the year 2015 and 25. And the year 2024, if we see a global plastic treaty, it's going to be a major change and major step in, let's say, completely finishing the plastic pollution. All right. So the mandate also recommends addressing the toxic burden of plastic. What we are talking about? Toxic burden of plastic. Following hundreds of studies showing the impact of plastic in the environment and its presence in air. So we are seeing the plastic Present in air also. Okay, this is one of the important things which can come as an option, that is plastic present in air? Then it is, the answer is yes. All right, please do not think that plastic is not present in air. So it's also present in air. It goes inside our lungs as well. Okay, through the nose. Okay, so in agricultural lands and also in drinking water, the microplastic which we talked about, okay, in our previous lecture. So toxic chemicals from plastics have been shown to enter the human body through a variety of routes, causing infertility. Infertility is one of the major symptoms of this, consequences of this, cancers and metabolic dysfunctions. Metabolic dysfunctions, because our body follows multiple metabolic pathways. Okay, whatever they are, protein, let's say protein changing to carbohydrates, carbohydrates changing to again some sort of energy. All right, glucose changing to multiple other things in the liver. Okay, what happens that microplastics go and bind to the enzyme sites, and this creates a problem in the metabolic pathway. This will stop the metabolic pathway in some manner. So it causes various different things, various infertility, cancer, metabolic dysfunctions, among others. Okay, one more thing, we see that plastic waste is everywhere now, from the peak of Mount Everest to the deepest of the seas. Okay, inside the bodies of animals and birds, and in human blood also, and breast milk also. S- So breast milk is very important here. Microplastics can be found in the breast milk. Okay, because ultimately it's coming from a let's say secretory gland. All right, the breast glands or the milk glands found in the breast are changed sebum glands or oil glands, modified oil glands. All right, they developed after the pregnancy period because of the multiple hormones such as oxytocin. All right, so what happens that because of these glands, the milk is filtered out from the blood itself. So microplastics enter the blood and then the milk. All right, and this can be fed directly to the baby or the infant. So it can also reach in the system of the infant child. All right, so plastic waste is everywhere and we need to tackle it. Now, what is happening that India in 2022. So we brought plastic waste management amendment rules, that is PWA rules. Okay, PWA rules of 2021. So it banned 19 categories of single-use plastic. 19 categories of single-use plastic. So what is single-use plastic? Essentially that cannot be recycled. Okay, or may not be recycled, but usually goes into the dump directly. Usually goes into the disposal directly, such as plastic cups, spoon. Okay, basically use and throw item. Use and throw items. So cups, spoons, earbuds, decorative thermocol, and so on. Okay, plastic cutlery. But it does not include plastic bottles. Does not include plastic bottles. So it can also come as a statement in the exam, that does it include plastic bottles or not, or it can be added to a statement. All right. So even those less than 200 ml and multi-layered packaging bottles like milk cartons. Okay. Now what we are seeing in 2024, April 23 to 29. Signatories again 175 countries which signed the mandate in 2022. So they collected, let's say arrived in Ottawa, Canada, to begin talk about the first global treaty to curb plastic pollution, or the Global Plastic Treaty. So significant discussions will be going on during this period, and they have ended actually. They came up, I'll tell you in the description what they came up with. It was nothing very significant because of the challenges involved. So that we will discuss in the last of the video. One more thing we see, that whatever happens now, it's not final. All right, the final round will be taking place in the November in the Busan in South Korea. Everybody must have watched that movie, The Train to Busan. So it is the same Busan in South Korea. Okay, so experts believe that the proposed treaty will be most important environmental accord since the 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change, in which nations agreed to cut greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so please remember the Montreal Protocol was about ozone, O3. Okay, depletion of the ozone depleting elements or chemicals. And Paris was basically about reducing the temperature and global warming. Okay, now let us see that why we need a global plastic treaty. So let us see in here. So global plastic production with projections. Projections mean for future also. We have reached here already around 2024. All right, and this is a projection. If we go as the business as usual, business as usual means, or BAU, BAU means no change. We do nothing. Okay, we keep the things as they are going. So we are seeing at the 2060. Now one thing we saw that if we take the median of this graph, here and here, the slope of this graph, it increases actually. Okay, it was like this earlier and now it goes towards this. So the slope increases. So we definitely need to do something, either even to keep it like this, keep the slope same. All right, so we cannot go the BAU route, we cannot go the business as usual route. Now where have we reached? Almost 500 million tons plastic production annually. All right, and this is increasing from the 1950s. So overall we see the statistics are worrisome. In 1950s, the overall plastic pollution or the plastic waste was basically just 2 million tons. 2 million tons. All right, and what we see that it is 450 million tons in 2019. And if left unchecked, that means if we keep going business as usual pathway, the production is slated to be doubled by 2050 and tripled by 2060. All right, so this is worrisome. Now what we can do, what is in our hands? Just a second. So if we see that we can dispose it better, then it's not going to happen. We have already reached the limits of our planet. All right, there are huge chunks of plastic. Just there is a chunk of plastic size of Australia just floating in the sea. All right, they are everywhere now, even inside our bodies. All right, so we have two pathways. One is to dispose, let's say, recycle them, reuse them. I hope you already know about the 4R concept, that is recycle, refuse, reuse. All right, and so on. And there is second thing that we can reduce the production. So that makes our fourth R. All right, so reduce the production. So this is what we are going to do right now, apart from the 3 Rs that I mentioned here. Okay, and now let's see one more thing, the other statistics, that although plastic is cheap and versatile material, it is widespread. Okay, about 4 million tons of plastic waste is generated annually. Just a second, I'll write the important statistics here. So 400 million tons empty of the plastic waste is generated annually. I'll tell what this 10% means also. Okay, and this figure is expected to jump by 62% between the years 2024 and 50. That means in next 25 years. So as I told you, the slope is going exponentially upwards. All right, so these statistics are very hard to digest for us. One more thing, what we see that plastic takes 20 to 500 years to decompose. All right, and less than 10% has been recycled till now. Overall, let's say if in the world till yet 100% plastic was produced, 90% is still unrecycled. Okay, nearly 6 billion ton. 6 billion ton. We are talking about billions. Okay, this many tons pollute the planet right now. On whole planet we have 6 billion tons of the plastic just dumped. Okay, so much of this plastic waste leaks into the environment. We'll talk about this also, but just let us see that where it goes. So much of the plastic goes into the environment. Even if we put the plastic in a landfill, it is eventually going to leach. Let's say when the rain comes, it's going to leach. Okay, it will be leaking in the environment and especially into the rivers. From the rivers it goes into the seas. Okay, so when it goes into the seas, it breaks down into smaller plastic, nano and nanoplastic also, and microplastics. Mostly we are talking about the microplastic. As I told you, they do not mean the 10 to the power minus 6 meter of plastic. They mean that any particle between 1 to 5 mm. So that means microplastics. Alright, so these contain more than 16,000 various different chemicals. Over 16,000 chemicals which can harm ecosystem and living organisms. Okay, so they in our body also they can disturb the hormones, cause cancer, diabetes, and so on. So let us see another statistics here. Just a second, I'll change the pen color. Okay, so around 0.5% of the plastic waste ends up in the ocean. And pathway of global plastic waste to the ocean, let's see. So this is plastic waste generated 353 million annually, or just let's say 400 million. Keep it anywhere near this number. Okay, this is mismanaged and littered plastic waste, 82 million. Most of it is mismanaged and littered. And 23% of the plastic waste is mismanaged. Rest is landfilled, recycled, or incinerated. And what we saw in one of the earlier lecture, that what happens when any such things are incompletely incinerated, they, even if they are, let's say, organic, then they will produce carbon waste. Okay, multiple carbon waste, carbon ash, and so on. Although we saw this in the thing of biofuel and so on. So not related to here, but we see when something is not completely incinerated, it still creates pollution. So 19 million of this is leaked to the environment. 6 million is leaked to rivers and coasts and ultimately to the sea. Okay, so it is a sort of going down process, a leaching process. That what happens first, what happens second, what happens third, fourth. Okay, now what we see that majorly the issue is the production. The issue is the production. So even if this was completely eliminated, this was completely eliminated, a big major chunk is overly produced. Okay, so this we need to reduce somehow. Next very important thing what we see that even if we dispose the plastic correctly, it does not stop the complete harm. Okay, what we see plastic production. Even if we produce the plastic in the first step itself, there is pollution. Even the production of plastic is creating pollution. Okay, and second thing is disposal. Even if we dispose them very correctly, it will still create some sort of pollution. Our responsibility and duty is to minimize that pollution. All right, so let's see how the OECD, that Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, it released a report in 2019. It said that plastics generated 1.8 billion tons of GHG emissions. 1.8 billion tons of GHG emission, that is 3.4% of the global emissions. So it is still a lot coming from a single source. Okay, so that is the issue. And why is this the issue? Where do these GHG come from? They come during the 90% of these come from the plastic production. So how they are produced? How the GHG is produced during the plastic production? Because of the using of fossil fuel. Because most of the plastic comes from the fossil fuel as a raw material from various different chemical reactions. So if current trend continue, emission from the production could grow by 20% by 2050. By 2050. All right, so overall we see a picture of different various statistics that we are doomed when it comes to the plastic production, disposal, and so on. So what is the solution for this? The treaty. Okay, so how will the treaty help us? What it can do? Okay, so it can just go beyond putting a cap on plastic production. Okay, first thing is that it can put a cap on the plastic production. Plastic production. And what do we mean by cap? Cap means to stop it somewhere. Okay, that you do not have to exceed this limit, set a limit. One more thing, the treaty can theoretically lay out guidelines on how rich nations should help poorer ones meet their plastic reduction target. So it's same as the carbon reduction targets. Okay, we talked about the global funds, global carbon fund, loss and damage fund. So we are just seeing here an economy. Okay, the economic basis. And what we see, the richer nations are more responsible towards the pollution of the earth than the poorer nations. So we cannot set the same limits for everybody. Okay, these nations may be having a hard time coping with this plastic pollution, even while producing lesser plastic, even while using lesser plastic. Okay, so there should be a transfer of the money here to here. All right. One more thing, it may also ban particular type of plastic. So India has done single-use plastic, we have banned. Okay, we still have some loopholes here and there. One more thing we can ban is that plastic products and chemical additives used in plastic, and set legally binding targets for recycling and recycled content used in the consumer goods. Alright, this treaty can also mandate the testing of certain chemicals in plastic. So what we do that we are still polluting essentially. We are still polluting if we are still producing. But we can make this pollution less harmful. We can make this pollution less harmful for the environment. And not only plastic, this treaty can also have effect on the plastic workers, the waste pickers. Okay, and let's say those people who depend on the plastic industry for a living. So our next focus is here is that why we are unable to achieve this. Alright, so what are the challenges involved towards this? Why we are not able to come to a treaty yet? So of course there are some parties, some countries, economy of which largely depend on the fossil fuel, and so plastic production. If the plastic production decreases, the fossil fuel demand will decrease, and these countries will get hurt. All right, the economies of these countries will get hurt. So some of the biggest oil and gas producing countries, as well as the fossil fuel and chemical industry groups, okay, they are trying to narrow the scope of the treaty to focus just on plastic waste and recycling. They are not letting the countries come to an agreement on reducing the production itself. Okay, so this is the issue. So treaty negotiations so far have been deeply polarizing. Polarizing means there are two groups now. One is the pro group, one is the against group. The one that are pro group, they want to reduce the plastic production. The against group, let's say these Middle Eastern countries and the chemical groups, the big chemical corporations, they are against this. All right, so it has been sort of polarizing. So since the first rounds of talk in Uruguay in November 2022, oil producing nations like Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, they have opposed plastic production cap and are using delay tactics. Okay, they want this treaty to come to delay. All right, we recently saw that Coca-Cola was the, let's say, sponsor of the COP. All right, it is the biggest plastic producer in the world, one of the biggest plastic producers in the world. So these things are the ones that are hurting our planet most because we are sort of greedy. Okay, but not to give opinions. Let's say we just need to go on with the facts here. So what we see overall, it is an economy issue. Economy issue to whom? To some oil producing countries and fossil fuel countries, FF countries we can say. Which countries? Let's say Saudi, Russia, and Iran. These countries or the Middle Eastern countries plus some big chemical groups. And one more fact what we remembered that in 2022 this meeting took place in the Uruguay. All right. Okay. Next, let's see which are the pro groups. These we saw, these are the against group. Let us see which are the pro group. So pro group this high ambition coalition. Okay. So the Republic of the Marshall Island formed the high ambition coalition in run up to negotiations at the UNFCCC to the Paris Agreement. So this exists like this was let's say created way before the discussions about the global plastic treaty took place in 2022. So 7th October 2021, at a ceremony held between the French and Indian governments, India officially joined the High Ambition Coalition. But what we see that USA is not the partner to this. Okay, India is a partner to High Ambition Coalition. So please remember this fact. All right. One more thing, a group of more than 70 countries, this HAC, that is High Ambition Coalition, and it encourages the adoption of global goal to protect 30 by 30. Now, what is this 30 by 30? Okay, please remember that India is a part of this high ambition coalition. Okay, USA is not part of the high ambition coalition because it largely depends upon the, let's say, fossil fuel. Okay, fossil fuel and chemical corporations are the big part of USA. Let us see one more thing that what is 30 by 30? So 30 by 30 is global target to protect 30% of the planet for nature by 2030. So it's included in the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and was agreed at COP 15. Okay, COP 15 of the CBD, not UNFCCC. All right, so focus on these points. So finally, what we see that 99% of the plastics are derived from fossil fuels. And fossil fuel industry continues to clutch plastics and petrochemicals as lifeline. The chemical and fossil fuel industries oppose cuts to plastic production. They are not letting us reduce. Okay. So falsely claiming that the plastic crisis is not a plastic problem but a waste problem, that we are not wasting or let's say managing the waste, plastic waste nicely. Okay, perfectly well. But it is not the issue. The issue is the plastic pollution or the plastic that is being produced in the first place, because even the production of the plastic leads to GHG emissions. Okay, because it is dependent on the fossil fuel. So everything that comes from the fossil fuel naturally becomes a pollutant. All right, so it is unfortunate that we are still dependent largely on the fossil fuel, but our net zero goals, which we saw for 2070, India especially, and we are at the forefront in developing the renewable energy solutions. All right, so it is due to such roadblocks that negotiations have failed to make significant process regarding the treaty. But in the November, we are expecting something positive at the end, and let's see what happens. So of course, we'll be updating you that time. All right, so this is the lecture for today. Thank you very much for your presence. I'll see you in the next lecture. Have a great day. Keep studying.